Despite what some in the White House are saying, there are alarming new numbers about the coronavirus in the U.S.
There's a notable rise in new coronavirus cases in several states.
On December 31, 2019, China reported several cases of unusual pneumonia in Wuhan City, a weird virus that was spreading faster than usual. At the time, the virus was unknown, and a new pandemic has started. On January 11, China announced its first death. On January 13, the first case appeared in Thailand. On January 17, a second death was reported in Wuhan. And after 3 days, a third death in the same city and more than 200 new infections. Authorities in the US, Nepal, France, Australia, Malaysia, Singapore, South Korea, Vietnam and Taiwan confirmed cases over the following days. And after only 1 month, there were more than 7,818 confirmed cases in 19 different countries. Since then, the coronavirus has turned life upside down in nations all over the world. The pandemic has caused global social and economic disruption. People lost their jobs. Countries have shut down. Airports were closed. Life has stopped. It has led to the postponement or cancellation of sporting, religious, political, and cultural events. Schools and universities have been closed in 172 countries, affecting 98.5% of the world's student population. Misinformation about the virus has circulated through social media and the mass media. There have been incidents of xenophobia and discrimination against Chinese people and against those who came from Asian countries. It was like the earth was taking a break from humans. After all this, it's no doubt that the world will never be the same again. Chapter 1. Life after the pandemic. Governments and businesses have finally done a lot of what environmentalists have said needs to be done to slow climate change. Look up. There are almost no airplanes. Flying, which is a major contributor to global warming, has basically stopped. Because we are staying at home and only traveling when necessary, car usage has dropped dramatically. The industry is slowing down and factories are causing less pollution. The horrendously polluting cruise ships have become pariahs after nightmarish news coverage of people trapped on them in quarantine. The air is clear and the rivers run blue. The planet is recovering from humanity as humanity tries to recover from the virus. Overnight, the world has at once become both more global and less global. The pandemic is global, and the response will have to be too, but at the same time life has become very local. We are traveling more like we did in the 1970s when flying or going abroad at all was a rare luxury. Borders have closed, international tourism has stopped. We will have to holiday at home and get to know our local areas. And at the same time that the economy becomes less global, the health response is by necessity becoming more global. Countries now are spending less on killing people and more to revive them. Scientists have always been pretty good at rising above politics and working together, but the politicians are starting to realize that any response, basically any vaccine, has to be global, otherwise it simply won't work. To survive this, the populists and nationalists will have to put aside all the nonsense of trade wars and nationalism that has been consuming so much progress and effectiveness. Great cities will survive the coronavirus. Cities have been the epicenters of infectious disease since the time of Gilgamesh, and they have always bounced back, often stronger than before. The Black Death decimated cities in Europe during the Middle Ages and in Asia, all the way up to the start of the 20th century. The Spanish flu of 1918 killed as many as 50 million people worldwide, and yet New York, London, and Paris all boomed in its wake. In fact, history shows that people often move to cities after pandemics because of the better job opportunities and the higher wages they offered after the sudden drop in population. Some aspects of our cities and metropolitan areas will be reshaped depending on how long the current pandemic lasts. Fear of density and of subways and trains in particular, plus a desire for safer, more private surroundings, may pull some toward the suburbs and rural areas. Families with children and the vulnerable in particular may trade their city apartments for a house with a backyard. But other forces will push people back toward the great urban centers. Ambitious young people will continue to flock to cities in search of personal and professional opportunities. The crisis may provide a short window for our unaffordable hyper-gentrified cities to reset and to re-energize their creative scenes. And this is an important point, we need to allow more growth in the periphery, which would require substantial changes in land use and zoning regulations, encouraging remote work where possible, and developing personal autonomous transport systems instead of forcing people into crowded subways. When cities were afflicted with pandemics in the early 20th century, society responded with de-densification. Manhattan went from a population of nearly 2.5 million in 1920 to 1.5 million in 1970. A similar process occurred in central London and Paris. As more people moved to the periphery, cities got safer and more sanitary. A similar strategy will help us in the future. Some dispersion of the population might also allow jobs to spread out and reduce urban housing costs. The next generation of suburbs, however, will have to be designed for lower emissions, more home-based work, and shorter commutes. Chapter 2. Priorities. What this pandemic has revealed is that for politicians, money and economy are more important than human life. Politicians were talking about opening the economy at the time where thousands of people were dying every single day. The government was ready to pay trillions of dollars for weapons and wars, but was not ready to pay half of that to keep people safe. In a time where everything has become expensive except the human has remained cheap, our priority should be giving human life more value than materials. The coronavirus pandemic has been a wake-up call for leaders all around the world to rethink urban planning, with health security as a top priority. In Singapore, the health system was already reorganized in the wake of the 2003 SARS epidemic, but this coronavirus is different. There are many aspects to health security that pose special challenges for a city lacking a rural hinterland, especially those involving the vulnerability of medical and food supply chains. Another aspect in a city like Singapore is securing the health of the large population of migrant foreign workers who have helped build and sustain the city. Singapore's total population is 5.7 million, of which almost 1 million are semi-skilled and unskilled workers, including foreign domestic workers and roughly 300,000 migrant workers, mostly working in construction. Most are housed in mega-sized dormitories. This close communal living, as well as crowded work sites, facilitated the infection of many workers in this pandemic. Post-coronavirus, the design of the dormitories will certainly be revisited and protocols strengthened. We've seen it all during this global public health crisis, overwhelmed hospitals forcing patients to sleep on the floor, mounting fear of being in proximity to others, but also the importance of a robust healthcare system. As a consequence of our collective and individual experiences throughout the pandemic, things should change in the healthcare landscape. And it should be done as soon as possible. Because if we don't do that, funerals will turn into rush jobs. Chapter 3. Rethinking Our Power. Trillions of dollars are spent every year on tanks and weapons. And yet, countries weren't able to fight a small enemy that cannot be seen with the naked eye. What is certain is that life after COVID-19 will be very different. Politics will be reshaped, people's attitudes will have changed in many and potentially opposite directions. Societies will have become more local. Neighborhoods will be better connected and more sociable. The world will be cleaner, and many people will be able to breathe clearly for the first time in years. But we will also have to reverse controls on society that were thrown up without much review, and which incumbent politicians may be keen to retain. After World War II, many great institutions were born, people had learned how to pull together, how to survive and endure appalling hardships. There was a greater sense of a global community and a greater sense of what that community did and did not want to move forward. I think the virus may do something similar, and out of the long and unknown battle ahead, we may emerge stronger and better. Hopefully a cure to coronavirus will be found. But whatever happens, we should keep in mind that the threat of infectious disease is not going away. Pandemics are not the mere imaginary product of a few artistic types. Frankly speaking, we are at a dramatic inflection point. Our response to this pandemic will have an enormous effect on the future of humankind. More than anything, the coronavirus has highlighted existing political, economic and social dysfunctionalities. It has also shown the crisis of leadership. It is an invitation to make radical changes to the economy, our social behavior and the role of government in our lives. Chapter 4. The Future of Technology. The buildings of the future will be proud and independent with their own water supply and heating. Geothermal wells are gaining popularity already. In addition to water, they can partially provide a home with heating. There will be several other sources of heating to have as a safety net, like a stove, a fireplace, a solid fuel boiler, a fuel generator and solar panels. Autonomous mini-stations generating alternative power will become a reality. The goal will be independence from the outside world, minimizing risks in the case of a full shutdown. Satellite internet is currently an expensive and inconvenient service, accessible only to certain individuals and organizations, such as maritime transport, mining and construction companies, and military organizations. In the future, developments for civilian use will be accelerated, offering us very quick access to the internet. OneWeb and SpaceX were already planning to cover the entire planet with this technology before the pandemic began. OneWeb has already deployed 40 of a planned 648 satellites into the Earth's orbit, while SpaceX's Starlink project envisages the launch of 12,000 satellites into low orbit by the mid-2020s. Water and air filtration systems tend to be seen as an unnecessary addition, easily abandoned in favor of a designer table. After the pandemic, the trend will change, as people worry about what might happen if a virus gets into the water supply. To make sure, people will be willing to pay for the excavation, surveys and filtration systems needed to install a well. Manufacturers of smart home systems will go one step further. Their programs will not only control the temperature of the air in the house, but also its quality, and if necessary, they will automatically clean it. Air from the outside will of course be filtered. Particularly demanding families may also create a cleaning room featuring antiseptic dispensers. Going through this space will be the only way into the house for deliveries or guests. Additionally, homes will also be equipped with a lamp that generates ultraviolet radiation, which can kill some harmful organisms like viruses and bacteria. There are many more pleasant discoveries ahead. The new world will be about things that matter. There will be fewer objects and they will be chosen more responsibly. More questions will be asked. Are they made of natural materials? And does their production harm the planet? In addition, governments will have to maintain local manufacturers to restore economic performance. Once you leave export and import, you will no longer be such frivolous cosmopolitans. All this needs to be done as soon as possible. But the question is, when this is over, will we simply turn the engines on and get back to destroying the planet? Or we stand out together and make this planet a better place to live? It's up to you to decide. So make sure to choose the right ones. Alright guys, that's it for today. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe and click the like button. Also let me know in the comments below what you learned from this video, or if you have a suggestion for a future video. Thank you for watching and see you next time.